was Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst.
It was Dewhurst, but it was when I was there. It was Dewhurst, and then Patrick took over, and he permanently changed the filibuster rules. So were you okay with it then?
I was I wasn't in office then, and frankly, I was a fan then and a fan now of the 2/3 rule. So,
but are you okay to break it? Were you okay breaking it? Because right now we wouldn't even be having these problems if the 2/3 rule was still in place. So they're using the only tools that were available for them at the time.
May I answer the question? Again, before my time, but as you described it, it sounds like to me that Dewhurst, and this is in the other chamber that you and I didn't serve in, that they avail themselves of their rules to change their rules, which we do every session. We adopt in the House our rules. We can modify or change them, keep them the same. So they did act under the color and under the letter of their law, if that's what was done.
So you were okay with them changing the rules for their means, but you have a problem with what Representative Thompson and the other Democratic state legislators do. I just don't get the double standard. I wanted to ask Ms. Thompson.
I'm in favor of them following the rules, and part of the rules allow you to modify or change the rules.
They're following the rules right now. Thank you.
What it does allow you to do is leave the state in abrogation of your Constitution.
Thank you, Representative Clardy. Thank you. I wanted to ask Representative Thompson something. I'm going to go off script from my remarks here, and I wanted to ask you this in closing. I don't know if you've seen the movie Birth of a Nation or not. It's a terrible movie, and one of the things that we have a hard time explaining to some of our white colleagues here is how racism is normalized. We're having this big debate right now over critical race theory and things like that, about how racism is normalized in society. And you have to see this movie to understand how people that were liberal and conservative back during that time period, our colleagues' grandparents and their great-grandparents believed these crazy stories and tales about black people committing voter fraud. And we're starting to hear these same stories and these same tales today. As a matter of fact, Ms. Thompson, you had one of your colleagues in the State House that had a map that was showing here's where the voter fraud takes place. I don't know if you remember seeing that video. He was saying, here's where the voter fraud takes place. And he was pointing to black precincts, and there was absolutely zero evidence of any voter fraud that was taking place. It was pure stereotyping. When you see this sort of stereotyping in 2021, Ms. Thompson, because you've seen Jim Crow end and get to where we are now, when you see the same sort of racial stereotyping taking place today, in 2021 that took place in a D.W. Griffith film in 1915. How does that make you feel?
The time of the gentleman's expired. Thank you to the gentleman from Dallas-Fort Worth, and the witness may answer the question.
It makes me feel like I'm not going to ever stop having to deal with the past and have to continue to keep fighting the past. And I can't progress further than the past. And my children will never get an opportunity, nor their children, to be able to live in society and be treated as an American and respected as American and have an opportunity and a right to be able to have a voice in their democracy, a right that we all are guaranteed under the Constitution. And in addition thereto, to feel as though that they are real citizens of this country, the only country that they have been born in and they know about. That's how I feel.
Again, thank you to the gentleman from Dallas-Fort Worth, and Ms. Thompson, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Davis, who's our final representative, is now on Zoom. Representative Davis, you are recognized for your 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for calling this very important hearing. And I certainly want to thank all of our witnesses, especially those who came all the way from Texas, and I don't really care how they got there, whether it was by plane, train, even if they had to walk. I think they would have been there just the same. So I thank them for taking their time and for coming. As a matter of fact, I call them my heroes and sheroes. And I call them that because I'm reminded that Dr. King was often fond of saying that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so even though we've been talking about Texas, but there are many places throughout the country where there are efforts to suppress, deny, delay, and take away the rights of people to vote, and certainly not to enhance them, which is what it seems like we really ought to be doing, is trying to make it easier for people to participate in public decision making. You know, after Republicans failed to pass these voter registration restrictions during the regular legislative session, Governor Abbott called a special session to try to ram through these anti-democratic measures. Under Texas law, the governor must set an agenda for these special sessions by specifying what issues lawmakers should consider. There were 11 items on the governor's agenda, which he released less than a day before the special session began. He called these priority items that will keep Texas, and I quote, on a path to prosperity. I think we have a slide that might show those. If we do, can we have the slide? Well, we won't worry about it at the moment. Governor Abbott had some other things. There we are. As you can see, Governor Abbott has other things on his mind beyond just voter suppression. He also focused on banning transgender student athletes from school sports and on curtailing discussions of racism in Texas classrooms, and on further restricting a woman's right to choose. But you know what is not included on this list? There's nothing on this list about solving the problems with Texas electrical grid that caused widespread power outages during winter storms this year. And I think we have a slide that would show some of that. Over 200 people died. An investigation by NBC News, the Texas Tribune, and ProPublica blamed the power failures for an unprecedented wave of carbon monoxide poisoning. Our subcommittee on environment is currently investigating these failures. Representative Collier, what was your reaction to Governor Abbott's failure to include further action on the electrical grid for this session that he called?
Thank you, Congressman. Great question. It was a missed opportunity for the state legislature to actually take action to provide the needed infrastructure and information and backing that Texans need. We have Texans now who are still conserving energy, and so we have not fully answered the call to provide necessary resources for Texans when it comes down to our power grid. We need to reinforce our power grid. We have so many other things that we could be focusing on. The governor not only failed to put on the power grid, but he also defunded the legislature in response and in retribution to the quorum break. So now 2,100 state employees who work for the Texas legislature in the legislative branch will be without health insurance in a state that already has the highest number of uninsured Texans. So unless the governor takes action, we will continue to see the erosion of humanity in this state.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you,
Reverend
Mr. Davis.
Bernal, you cited systemic failures that led to these outages, including
Mr. Davis, forgive me. Well, we're going to have to go vote. Your time is expired, so I'm afraid we'll have to cut it off there. But invite you to, continue that line of questioning in written questions to the witnesses, if we could.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back and thank the witnesses again for coming.
And thank you, Mr. Davis. Let's see. So what I'd like to do is to give, you've already gone, Mr. Bernal. I'd like to give 30 seconds to each of the witnesses for any closing thoughts, including the ones who are on Zoom. Ms. Collier, did you have something that you could do within 30 seconds?
I just love you fucking niggers chipping out. You know, you're too fucking stupid to go down like every other race, every other person in America and get an ID to vote. But not you dumb fucking force monkeys. You can't even accomplish that. That's how fucking stupid and how big a failure the American nigger is. You're part of that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know who that's coming from, that's offensive.
Thank you. Absolutely, it's offensive.
Where did
This
that
is a
come
call
from?
that was made to my government state office.
Oh, well,
And these are
ma'am,
the type of people
I could put
that-
those up also. I don't think
Well,
it's
these are the type
appropriate,
of people
Mr.
that
Chairman.
we-
Okay,
that to be
Ms.
in
Collier's
this
time,
hearing.
thank you very much for
I
playing
think that's
that.
inappropriate, Mr. Chairman.
You are now recognized for your 30 seconds, Mr. Sessions.
I will take my 30 seconds. I want to thank the witnesses that were here today. I would personally like to meet with them. I have no say in grounding this out, but I think that the difference between the truths on both sides and reality in the middle is that there was a lot on the side, and that is very simple. Texas Jim Crow laws took place by Democrats until literally the year 2000. And it was a two-party system that changed what is occurring. A two-party system. And yet our witnesses, or at least 3 or 4 of them, are here to go to one-party rule. And I don't think that's what makes America great. And I think they should understand that. And I think it's a Constitution, I think it's a Supreme Court, and one-party rule would overrule everybody, including the Supreme Court. They would overrule everything except political consideration as opposed to the law. And so I think what you're doing, I would ask that you would rethink that. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here, and I would sincerely like to find the differences between those that we have, and I would encourage you to please contact me to do that. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Sessions. Mr. Thompson, did you have anything you wanted to say in closing?
Thank you, and Pete, I want to thank you so much. You know, we have differences, but reasonable minds can differ. We can solve them. I'm ready to work with you, brother.
Thank you so much, and let's see, Ms.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
If you just give me a moment. I want to just thank you for this meeting. And I want to just say that I'm hoping during my lifetime that I don't have to keep struggling with the past, and I can move forward, and I can be able to protect the rights of my constituents to vote. Lyndon Baines Johnson, 56 years ago, was the president who had enough integrity about himself to give us a federal answer to the struggles of voting. And I'm hoping that this Congress will do the same thing for us.
Thank you very much, Representative Thompson. Representative Clardy, let's come to you for your 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I want to thank you for your courtesies having us in. But I do want to say one thing. There was a statement made about somehow this bill makes it a crime to encourage people to vote. That is an absolute falsehood. I do not understand the hysteria and the hyperbole that surrounds this bill. This is a good bill. Take the time to read it. You know, the one thing I didn't hear today, I didn't hear the entire time I served in the Elections Committee in the regular session, nor in this Select Committee so far in the special session, was anybody came forward and said, I was deprived my opportunity to vote. I wanted to, but I couldn't vote in Texas. If you want to vote in Texas, if you register and you're eligible, you get to vote in Texas. We had a record turnout in this last election cycle. But I got to come back to something Congressman Maloney, I think, said about, well, there's no evidence of widespread panic.
Okay, if you make this your final point, if you would.
If I would, this is the final point. There's no evidence of widespread fraud in Texas, and they compared it to a lightning strike. The difference is there's nothing we can do to stop lightning strikes. We can stop election fraud. We have to have zero tolerance for election fraud in this country.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to excuse myself to go and vote. We'll hear from Ms. Perales, and I'm asking Congresswoman Norton to take over for me. I just want to say in closing that our nation was founded with the beautiful idea of the consent of the governed and the participation of all of the people, at the same time that it was also founded with lots of efforts to exclude people from voting. And we've got to overcome that urge to exclude people from voting. I commend and I thank our colleagues from Texas for coming to Washington to remind us about what really is crucial in our country, which is making sure that everybody's right to vote is protected against every attempt to restrict the franchise, even if it's complex and subtle. And with that, I turn it over to Congresswoman Norton.
Y'all come home. Texas needs you.
I'm ready to give my closing.
For Ms. Perales.
Thank you. With all due respect to Representative Clardy, for whom I have an enormous amount of respect, Senate Bill 1, Section 5.04 makes it a crime to encourage a voter to choose them as an assistor and then to go to the polls and assist that voter and sign the oath. So in fact, it is a crime. I just want to close by saying there is only one reality here. The reality is in the face of the bills, which anybody can read. The reality is in the changing demographics of Texas, largely driven by Latino, African American, and Asian American voters. And when Texas restricts voter assistance, and everybody knows that the majority of voters who receive assistance are Asian American and Latino, and nobody comes and testifies that these restrictions are necessary or based on anything that happened at the polls. The only rational conclusion that we can draw is that this is an attempt at voter suppression. Thank you.
I thank you very much. This hearing has really been necessary. The American people needed to know why Democrats in Texas fled their state. That was so important that we have held an entire hearing on what you have done. I can only thank you that your own extraordinary steps have educated the rest of the country on just how important voting is. You have come to the District of Columbia, which I represent. The District of Columbia does not have the final vote on the House floor. I vote in this committee, and I have all the other benefits of being a House member. I have no representation. The people I represent, a number larger than those of 2 states that have all of their rights, have no votes whatsoever in the Senate. So it has been a very great pleasure for me to hear from representatives who have the vote, cherish the vote, and have made it clear to all of us why the vote is so important. I thank you very much again for your testimony, and this hearing is now adjourned.